Welcome to 30 Minutes of Faith. We're very happy today to have Bishop Chris Baker with us, a fairly new friend and some things we've been doing, a Christian minister and a worker with trafficking and trying to bring that to an end and some other things. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, John.
Tell us where you were born and raised.
I was born and raised in San Francisco, California.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, sir. I have 7 brothers and sisters.
Are they still living?
No, 2 have passed away.
And how did you end up in Sacramento?
I moved here in '94 to work and then became a single father, and I'm still here.
And you survived being a single father?
Yes, sir.
Tell us more about your son. You and I have talked about him before.
He's a great kid. He had some tough times in elementary school and so on, and I stuck in there with him, worked hard with him to get his education, and now he's very successful in college.
And he's going to college?
To be a public speaking and communications major.
Down in the Southland somewhere?
Yeah, Bakersfield.
Bakersfield.
Yes, sir.
The CSU system's a good system, isn't it?
Yes.
Provides
yes.
many opportunities.
Lots of opportunities.
Now, tell us a little bit about growing up. I know life didn't just happen and snap through for you.
Yes, well, I grew up in foster care system and many children's institutes back in those days. It wasn't much focus on like foster homes. You were here one day, you were there the next day. So I was placed in several institutions, foster care, abuse, and so on and so on. And it was a rough time. And as I got older, I rebelled, did some wrong things, living in the streets and those sorts of things. But I had a mentor that kind of brought me back to reality, to help me not to end up in the penal system. And so as I learned through what I've been through, I can relate to other kids that's going through that same process and help them move forward towards their goal to be a successful person in society.
When I was a child, my father and mother had a conversation about sin and repentance. And Dad would say, a sin is a nail and you pound it in the board. And then when you repent, you pull the nail out. Mm-hmm. And my mother would say, yeah, but the nail mark's still there. And Dad would say, that doesn't matter. The nail's not there anymore. And Mother would kind of say, well, sometimes you pound that sin through far enough, it'll come out the other end, hold the board up, and you can see the hole. And Dad would say, it doesn't matter. The nail's not there. And I was just a child, but I listened to that carefully.
Yes.
And thought as I growing up, I'll try not to pound too many nails, hope that I get a chance to pull them out. Now, what brought you to the ministry?
I was mentored, and I've seen a lot of things as growing up. I had this thing, I wouldn't allow no one to come minister to me because of the things I've been through and so on. And there was this one particular gentleman that used to come and minister to me inside the juvenile system, and I would always get angry at him and want to fight him, and I could never seem to do that. And I'd watch him back and forth, and he would be reading his Bible and his various other little faith
How
articles.
old of a man?
Oh, back then he was, I would say, in his late 30s. And I'd watch him, and one day I was very rude and obnoxious to him and just wanted to fight. And he said, sit down. And I sat down, and he says, take a look at this. And I was reading with him, and since then I liked it.
And how old were you?
Oh, I was about 15. And I was reading some things he left me about faith and moving towards the essence of God and all those things. And ever since then, I've grown to like, man, I want to know more, but I was embarrassed because I had friends that was into the drugs and all those sorts of things. And I didn't think I would be cool if I was, getting involved in back then they called them Jesus freaks and all those sorts of things. Then I steadily got involved, and it changed me. It changed my life. You see, there's hope out there. You can have some positiveness. You don't have to live in the past because there's hope.
Did you ever live in a place when you were a child where you prayed and a family prayed, or you were taken to church or any of those things?
I lived in one particular foster home, and I was taken to a particular church in San Francisco, and it was so long ago, and it really wasn't something back then that I was able to focus on. It was just we had to get up and go every Sunday. It wasn't until I got older and understood by this gentleman what faith was all about and how it can help you move towards a better life. And as I got older in my teens is when I started realizing there is a God. There is something I can look forward to that can help me through this process.
Now, how did you come to be an ordained minister?
I was in a particular church, a ministry, and funny thing is my real mother, when I started visiting her when I was about 18, 19 years old, she would tell me all the time, you better get right with God, and you were called since she was a little boy because she was into the Pentecostal movement. And I said, okay, I need to get back in it and learn more what I need to learn and get into a ministry school. And I got involved in that, became an ordained minister, and then the steps just kept climbing.
Well, we're glad that happened to you.
Yes, sir.
That's a good thing. Now, tell us about the work you're doing, because I know you're fighting trafficking tooth and nail, and we'd like to hear more about that.
Well, yes, I'm a board member and also active with Bridge Network, and we combat human trafficking, youth at risk, and juvenile, and we have a great after-school program. And the reason when I got involved with that, with Peggy, is that it brought back something to me that I went through in my life, and I said, this is it. I can give back to what God gave me. That, hey, tell these kids that there's a future ahead of you. You can get through this. And it all, like I said, it falls on me because when I see that, I'm like, God help me through this. I was abused all sorts of ways and sorts of things, and I can give back. So that's how I got involved in the human trafficking. I've seen that in San Francisco. I've seen kids abused. So I look at this right now that I can give back to God, and I love talking to the children and just encourage them to keep moving forward.
Now, teach us a little bit more about trafficking, because those that are listening to us may or may not know. Is most of the trafficking being done outside of California? Kids are being sent outside of California. People from other states are being brought into California. How's that working?
Well, it varies, John. It depending what areas you're in. There's kids that's trafficked, from Sacramento on up the coast, like to Vegas, Arizona, throughout the corridor. Some come from different states and come through here. So it's a variety of where they're at. They come through San Francisco here, and then on, like I say, on up to Arizona. So it's a variety of where they come from. It's hard to pinpoint exactly where they're coming from, but this is the corridor where they travel through.
Girls and boys both?
Girls and boys.
And what happens that they get trafficked?
Most of them, the reality and the thing is that they want to say they come from bad homes and things like that, and they're runaways. A lot of them, a percentage is runaways, and they get in an environment where these traffickers or pimps or whatever you want to call them befriend them and say that, yeah, you need this, you need that, and you need this. Your parents can't give it to you, and so on and so on. And they get out there and they do what it is that they do, and they see the money and they like it, and then they have this pimp or whatever you call it, and they get caught up in that, and the money looks good to them. So it's hard to wean them from that once they've been in it for quite a long time.
I read not too long ago, I think in the Wall Street Journal, that the age of kids being trafficked is growing ever younger and younger and younger.
Yes.
That made my heart hurt.
Mine's too.
I guess I sort of thought, well, if it's a 17-year-old girl, she should be far enough along to figure out what it is she wants to do and not to do. But if it's a 10-year-old, that's a whole different story,
And that's getting worse because they're using technology now to do their trafficking. They're using various websites to traffic younger kids, older kids. And for law enforcement, it's hard to keep track of them because they'll shut one website down, open 3 or 4 more up, and you have this trend of different generic websites that these kids with pictures are on there and those sorts of things, and it's hard to catch up with them.
So your after-school program, what are the ages of the kids there?
They range from, I would say, as far as maybe 11 on up. And they come and do their after-school work, and it's a safe center, and we provide computers for them, meals for them, till their parents come pick them up. They play games, educational games, talk with each other, and from that particular area, it's not well recognized. We just had a kid that got a letter from the president for his academic achievements, and we had another girl that got a 4-year scholarship that's from that area. So our goal is to motivate them to change, to motivate them and encourage them that they can do what others do too. And don't be a statistic just because you live in a predominantly low-income area.
That's a good way to say that.
Yes.
Are most of these kids raised in a single-parent home?
I would say most of them, yes, John. Percentage-wise, I don't know what it is, but it is a lot of them that's in single-parent homes.
We hear a lot these days amongst men about how important it is for kids to have a father.
Yes.
There needs to be a man in the house.
Yes.
But being a man is more than just living in the house, and
yes,
some men have a hard time with that.
They do. Some, it's hard because some is not encouraged to take care of their responsibilities due to the fact that I find some of them don't have an education, and they're embarrassed with that. And then there's a lot of strife within the home for various reasons, and you have each go their separate ways.
How are you funded? How do you stay afloat and keep going?
Well, John, that's a good question. we stay afloat by various funding. The executive director uses some of her own money, and various parents that come and help us, and whoever else that want to give us funding, such as the Oates Family Foundation. They have helped us, fund us, and they were great people, and we depend on a lot of that, but we try to keep it to a bare minimum where we can be able to just go out to the community and say, here we are. We don't want them to come and get that notation that since they don't have funding, they're not going to do nothing for us.
That's a good way. Are you the sole staffer?
No, it's, Peggy Fobbs, the executive director. I'm the strategic and board member. Then there's Rachel, and there's a few others. I don't remember their name, but they're on the staff. And they're great people. We all work together for the benefit of the kids.
They're doing good.
Yes, sir.
Did you think when you were 14 you'd be where you are now?
No, I didn't, John. And when people ask me that, I say what my compassion is. The reason I like it, because this type of stuff wasn't around when I was a kid, where I can go to a center and I can confide in a counselor or someone that can mentor me in an area that I can achieve something. That wasn't around when I was a kid. What was around when I was a kid is a hospital bed wrapped in sheets, pumped full of drugs, and being experimented on. And that's not today. Today we have all these organizations that's out there to help kids to get through that.
Now, you and I came to know each other through Court and Clergy.
Yes, sir.
So how did you come to that?
I came to Court and Clergy by a brochure someone handed me at an event. I can't remember the event, and I was reading up on that, and I'm like, I like this too. Everybody work together and not against each other. You have different faiths, you have different cultures, different opinions, but at the end of the day, we all come together and throw out the negative opinion and work together for the betterment of our society and our communities.
And would it be fair to say that most of the ministers and pastors who go visit their parishioners in jail aren't always positive that the young people are getting a fair shake? And maybe while you think about it, the judges have still got to abide the law and rule accordingly. They can't just throw it out the window and say, well, the Constitution didn't mean that for you.
Right.
So it's a fine line there that everybody's having to walk.
Yes, and that is, I look at that side of it too. I mean, I visited a lot of inmates that various parents or relatives called me to go visit. And we got to also look at the fact that what they done to get themselves in there is consequences. Our job is to go and pray for them, encourage them, to come to a point in their life where they can say, this is it, enough is enough. But then, like I said, we have to look at the consequences. So what I do, I don't go in saying they were treated wrong right off the top. I go in with a renewed mind, a godly mind that say this is still a soul. Even if it was a heinous crime, it's still a soul, but there is consequences that you have to take.
So getting out is not always the option?
No, depending upon the crime that put them there. It's not always the option. Getting out early or getting out at all, it's not always the option.
Do you think the young people, particularly who fall into either trafficking or addictions or crime, are they getting a fair look in the courts?
Let me say, in trafficking, I would say no. And there's a bill that I can't remember it off the top of my head, and I believe it was signed. And here's what they would do with the young girls, boys that's trafficked. They would pick them up and they would take them to juvenile and put them on an ankle monitor, whatever the case may be. So what that is you're re-victimizing them for something they're not in control of, something they were forced to do. Well, now this bill that passed is going to create an environment where they can get out of that and there's going to be help for them.
I saw not too long ago, in fact, I was talking to the district attorney about, being a prostitute shouldn't make you a criminal. If an alternative for you in your life can be found, whereas in the past, people say, well, she's a prostitute, so she must be no good and of no value to society, and that law enforcement would like to change that.
Yes, they would, and I agree with you, John. Being a prostitute should not define that individual as a bad person, because the reason they're a prostitute, we don't know. Like, let's go back to trafficking. They could have been trafficked when they were younger, and this is the only thing they know, and no one never intervened. And I agree with your question. If there's some type of solution to get them away from that, some type of program where they can get out of that lifestyle and be productive, such as a trade school, getting in the working field, that's what we need to focus on.
When you've got your minister hat on with young people that you're visiting, whether it's a hospital or jail or juvenile hall, what are you preaching to them? What are you trying to teach them?
Our goal is to teach them have faith, but then in a lot of the, I guess safe to say, institutions, whatever you want to call them, you have to be careful because they don't want you to come in with a religious agenda. And so your hand sometimes is tied. Like in one particular place, you can't take them aside, you can't pray for them, you can't teach anything of ministry because of, I forget the name, but it's just not allowed. And if you are caught doing it, they sometimes will suspend your visit. So it's hard to go in there when you see that individual and you need to touch and agree with them. So here's what I do, and I tell other people, even though you can't do it physically, like I can't touch you physically and say, hey, I want to pray with you. When you're talking to them, inside of your mind, pray of God protection over them. Pray that God will come and change them. You don't have to physically touch them and do this and that, but when you're in there, pray in your mind. When you go home, pray for them.
Several years ago, 6 or 8, I was with the chief of police, who is no longer the chief of police, and we went to visit a group of people who had been let out of federal prison, and they had been bused to Sacramento, not to be dropped off, but these were people who specifically had family or friends in Sacramento, and that's where they wanted to go. And they were asked when they were leaving, what would you like? Everybody wanted a bottle of water. Everybody wanted some sort of little container that they could put money or something in. And then most of them wanted a Bible. They didn't have a Bible, but one of the outlets had these little books about this thick that were just the teachings of Paul. So they were just the writings, the letters of the Apostle Paul. And, they'd said to him, this isn't the Bible, but it's the writings of the Apostle Paul. Would you like this book? And every single person took one. They wanted something that they could kind of read and get solace and comfort from. So in your after-school program then, do they get religion?
We, being a 501c3, that's another category. We have a variety of cultures, and you have to be careful because some may not agree with the way
Sure.
your religion is. But what we do, it's free for open discussion, and we have a piece of paper there, and we want them to feel free to come for religious counseling, or if they want to read something, we have books in there. We don't force them to read them. We don't force God on them. But if they ask a question about the pictures in there and so on, then that's when we come in and you ask them, do you want to learn more about it? But we don't force it on them.
How about, what are the kids looking for first and foremost in an after-school program? What is it they really want there?
Oh, a lot of them, John, they come and they look for a lot of different things on the computer. A lot of them want to graduate. They want to be singers. They want to be a doctor, a lawyer. And I personally love it when they come in with that energy and that attitude to get on the computer and look certain things up, because here's why. I'd rather see them do that than see them out in the streets and caught up in a bunch of negative environment. So that's what we give them, a nurtured, positive environment. And it's paying off.
Are they hungry when they get there?
Yes, they are.
Or they want something to snack on?
Oh, yes, and we have
soda
that
to
for
drink or something?
Yes,
like
sir. We have all that for them.
Did you ever go to bed hungry?
Yes, I did. Yes,
I have never gone to bed hungry
Yes, I did.
in my life, and I'm very sympathetic to a lot of people I've met who've gone to bed hungry many times. And that's something I just had never known. My mother was a young widow, and we measured what we did, but I never went to bed hungry. And a year or two ago, we were involved in a program where we prepared these little backpacks for grade school kids to take home on the weekend because there wasn't much food at home during the weekend. And so, you know, they'd have stuff to snack on Saturday and Sunday. When they brought it back on Monday, the empty backpack, it'd be refilled and hung to save for them on Friday when they left again.
Right.
And to them, these little kids that are 7 and 8 and 9, 10 years old, the great priority in their life is, will I have anything to eat on Saturday and Sunday?
Wow.
And that dazzled me. It really, really dazzled me, because I just never ever crossed my path in my life, or the life of our children or our grandchildren, you know, those kinds of things. So do some of them just want to sleep, watch TV, any of that stuff?
Well, when they come to our center, not really. I don't see that in them. A lot of them, as I said earlier, they come and want to get on the computer and do karaoke and dance and
Music's a great language.
Yeah, and then just do fun things and hula hoop and various things we got in there they can do. They play foosball, and I'm known there as the principal. They all come and want me to play foosball with them and all these sorts of things. And that's the environment we like there.
Fun is good.
Yes.
Now, what will you be doing in 5 or 10 years from now?
5 or 10 years from now, I want to still be doing what I'm doing. I want to see it succeed. I want to see the kids that I've talked to now and previously come up to me and say, hey, remember me? I want to see them telling me they're a doctor or they're a lawyer or whatever their goal was to be. I want to see them in that category. And then I'll know, job well done.
Boy, that would be sweet.
Lovely, sweet.
How about what's going to happen when you become a grandpa?
I'm already a grandpa.
Oh, are
John.
you?
Yes.
Do you get to see the grandchildren?
I have one. He's 5, and not that much because my daughter lives in Fremont, so it's hard. I mean, I talk to him on the phone a lot, and it's hard to get up there. But her and her husband's doing a good job with him.
Good. It's fun to love your children's children.
Yes. That's
a wonderful thing. Tell me about the Sacramento area as opposed to, say, growing up in the Bay or other areas. How does Sacramento go with all the stuff you'd like to see done?
Sacramento area it's very diverse, a lot of different cultures. Some things are hard to get involved in as far as like knocking down walls and so on. But compared to where I grew up, I would say Sacramento is much easier. It's very diverse. It has a lot of social programs for kids, parents, and all those sorts of things. And that's what I push for, is to get them involved in those programs that Sacramento has, because in order for them not to be that statistic, they have to be motivated to change and get into these programs so they can be productive in society.
How do the young people avoid gangs and go into programs that will help them rather than just be swallowed up by peer pressure?
I will sit here and say, I can say how they avoid them. And John, that's a real good question, because most of our kids mainly are, come on, let's face it, the minority areas, and that's what sucked them up, gangs. And we try to create an environment, an outlet for positiveness, but when they go home, that environment is still there. So where do we catch them at when they go home?
Were their parents gang members? I mean, my father and mother would say, well, yeah, I did that too, and, da-da-da-da-da, whatever it might be. And I understand where you're coming from. We said that to our children. You're not the first one to ever do that.
Right.
We went down that lane too. But so do some of these kids have parents who are gang members?
I would say some of them. I haven't talked to that many of them that got into their family home style, but statistics do show that a lot of them parents were gang members, and it's trickled down from inside the home. It's not trickled down from like society outside the home, but it's trickled from there. And that's where it gets hard to catch them, because it's already in their mind, and they're focused on doing that. And you have these programs, and they'll look at like, well, why should I do that when I can go out here and do this? And it's hard to catch them then.
Now, kids aren't born prejudiced and biased, are they?
No.
They have to learn that?
No.
And do they learn that at home or on the school ground? Or
they learn it at home, between various family members or whoever they're with, and also when they get caught up in the gangs or the groups they run with. But mainly, they're taught that. So it's not something they're born with. They're taught that.
Do you preach against that on Sundays when you're giving sermons?
Various times I have.
And how is it received?
Oh, it's received well. I've had various calls from grandmothers, mothers, and just regular church members that say that needs to be talked about more in schools and all these sorts of things.
Okay. We're at an end. So I'd like to ask you, like we ask all of our guests, if you could wave a magic wand to fix or change or repair something in our society, what would that be?
That would be for all leaders, political leaders and all, to get together and let's do the job that we're supposed to do to get us back, whether it's America, various states, counties, cities, to get us back on track where we need to be.
Is that ever going to happen?
I would hope it will happen, John. I would say yes.
So too. Thanks, brother.
Thank you, John.
Nice to visit with you.
You
Appreciate
too.
you being here. Keep the faith.
Yes, sir.